Welcome back. If you're just joining, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. We just wrapped up the Daybreak interactive segment of the program, and now it's time for the discussion segment. And of course, we'll be snowballing the conversation this time into the same conversation that we had on a Daybreak interactive, talking about the local government autonomy and the 3 months period that's been agreed upon by the federal and state governors for the implementation, expectedly to hash out modalities before the implementation takes full effect. Now joining me in the studio to provide some legal context to these developments, I have the senior advocate of Nigeria with me in person of Barrister Sam Kargbo, Senate Counsel. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're just having a conversation, off air, and I mean, at this point, one would expect that when a Supreme Court verdict is pronounced, it is supposed to be effected immediately. But now we're seeing the federal government saying it needs 3 months, including the state governors, 3 months period to hash out some modalities before we see full implementation. Is there sort of a transgression here for the federal government to say it needs a 3 month period, expectedly when a Supreme Court verdict has been put out?
Transgression against who or what?
Okay, has the law been broken?
No law has been broken. No law has been broken. And let me put it this way, because I think that discussion has been going on, and even from among our colleagues, they tended towards what I think you are insinuating, but that shouldn't be, and that's not what the law is. Yes, once a judgment is delivered, it takes effect immediately. The others, they're attacked immediately. Sometimes you can ask for those orders to be stayed to give you a breather. You understand? And let's go back to the judgment and see its components. A better part of the judgment are declarations, declaratory reliefs. Those ones, of course, are not one you can enforce. What it means is not one that you go and execute, because they are declarations. But there are injunctive and mandatory orders that follow. Those ones also can be enforced. And those are the ones we should be talking about. And the only potent one there that is the federal government can hold on to effect the entire essence of the judgment is the withholding of the funds that are due to the local government of a state that has not constituted an elected local government council, that they can't withhold. But that's the federal government that is the beneficiary of that judgment has the power to, what would I call it now? Waive, suspend, or what would I call it?
Delay?
Delay, because it inheres in it. Every judgment, irrespective of what it is, can be compromised by the beneficiary of that judgment. You understand? It can be compromised because the discretion is just like your own property. Whatever you want to do with it, it's within your right. So the federal government can, on its own, compromise that. It is legal and has nothing to do with what? The
pronouncement.
The pronouncement. And he has not offended the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court was not a party. It only made a decision on the basis of the contest between the Attorney General of the Federation and the attorneys of the 36 state of the Federation. So he is independent. But if usually we try to confuse orders that the court give to give authority and potency to its control over the proceedings in court.
How so?
Those ones are basically for the benefit of the court, because what? The court wants to take charge of its own proceedings. It does not want any of the parties or even third party to undermine its own integrity and hold and control over the proceedings. Such orders, if you compromise them or breach them, there are sanctions. Okay. You understand? There are sanctions. But here is a judgment in your favor. And if, in your own wisdom, looking at the circumstances of the case and looking at the practicality of it, you now said, okay, I'm going to give you 3 months to put your house in order. If not, you know what I can do and the power that I have. Okay, so you understand?
Perhaps we should give a layman example. Let's say, for instance, yes. A landlord or the owner of a building has gotten a court order evicting, a tenant from the house. So the landlord can then decide to give a period at which the tenant can move out of the building. So this is the situation that we are seeing.
You got it better than I could have even imagined.
Nigerians, I think we should now understand the case as it is. But then again, Learned Counsel, there's still concerns about the question of whether these local governments are going to be as autonomous, as it has been put out. For example, this is financial autonomy. What about control? What about the other things that come with it? Local government chairmen, councillors being subservient, to state governors politically. Isn't this going to undermine this said autonomy that they got?
It will. It will. But you see, the federal government has done its part, and the Supreme Court has also done its part. It's for the local government councils to wake up to the leverage that has been given to them. And it is also for the citizenry to actually take a look at it and pay more attention to it. Because this is the foundation or the basis of that judgment. Those of us who are constitutionalists, in law, we say those of us who are Austinians, we say this is what the letters of the law says. And therefore, you as an interpreter, your business is what? To interpret the law and not to make it. That's for constitutionalists. Almost all of us as practitioners, that is the way our mind is constituted and framed. And that is why you see some of us saying, oh, you are making the law or you are amending the Constitution. That is not your business, because what? It is for the National Assembly to do, not you. You understand? Even the provisions for convergence, that is where you collaborate, they call the balances, checks and balances, where you have to collaborate, that provision does not allow you to do that which you do. But there are constitutional theorists who would say, not so fast. The highest authority in the interpretation of the law is the Supreme Court. And irrespective of the letters that you have, the meaning can only come through the interpretation given to each. And in any case, if you give me the final authority to interpret, underlining it is the power to amend. And those are the theories, because that is the purpose of what? The Constitution itself. Good governance. Good governance. And the protection of what? Your rights and your welfare. So the authority that you have given that absolute power to interpret has some modicum of what? Because he could say, I'm tired of your nonsense. Let me put some sanity to this. And somebody would say, take a look at the American Constitution and take a look at what is happening there. The American Constitution, very few provisions. And if you listen to their own jurisprudence and discussion, most of the time, reference is made to what? The Supreme Court. Let us wait what the Supreme Court would say. And from thereafter, that is the flow.
Okay.
There is nowhere in the American Constitution you will go and find where they say this Constitution is supreme. All of that one is the Supreme Court. That is it. Cases of Madison and Marbury, all of those ones are cases that what? Amended the Constitution. They expanded it to give what? The purpose of the Constitution. So it is not entirely right to say, oh, the Supreme Court can't say this. The Supreme Court has gone outside the power. No, it can, because what? By its nature, it's a court of policy.
All right.
You understand? It's a court of policy. So the Supreme Court has done its part. But civic culture comes in. What do we do to complement that?
Indeed.
Because it is your complementary effort that would give the Supreme Court what? The encouragement to do what it is. Very recently, a retired justice of the Supreme Court, Amnawagi, explained, I put it in just in passing, but that was very telling of all that she said. I said, oh, he said, before the case of Peter Obi in Anambra, not too many politicians knew the power of the Supreme Court. Even for us as legal practitioners, we just saw it as an interpreter of the law. But when they made that decision, then I said, after Mechi, after this one, then we have to look at this very seriously. I said that was why you see them pushing in their children into the bench, because they now recognize this. Just like those days, when politicians saw the power of the military, all of their children were going to the military. So the Supreme Court is much more powerful than we say it. But much of the time, as I would always say, and as I have written somewhere, it has to take a cue from the people. And I would think that when they say we don't want an activist Supreme Court, I'm saying no, because what? That is the reason. It is because it is not using that power. That is why we have this supermarket mentality. For every day, for every issue, we'll go to the National Assembly for amendment. There is no round of election, you don't amend the Electoral Act. The Americans don't have that luxury, because in any case, their politics will never allow it, because what? Their own politics is absolutely too... If you're a Republican, your interest is to promote
the Republican
agenda. If you are a Democrat, that is your business. Not here where we have people here and there. There is absolutely. So if they say the only way that the law there can grow and improve, it is through their own Congress, they would have been killed, because what? It won't happen.
No, let me just say, but yes. You mentioned something about taking responsibility as Nigerians to ensure that the system works, and also to strengthen, the Supreme Court to have the courage to make such pronouncement that it has been making. By virtue of the fact that we are Nigerians, it means that we belong to a particular state, we are from a particular local government, and we are from a particular ward, which means we are the people.
Yes.
Now, speaking from an informed perspective, what would you think will be required in order for these local governments to get a full autonomy and also exit the control of state governors and their influences? Is this possible in the first instance?
You see, if you look at Section 7 and they look at Section 162 or 63 thereabout, you see that ordinarily the State House of Assembly can do that.
But they are also influenced.
They can do that
the state executive.
Two ways, because what? The duty to ensure that there is a functional and constitutional and democratic local government councils within the state inheres in the state, and the lawmaking authority of the state is State House of Assembly. And also, the state also, from their own internally generated revenue, are bound to give a portion of it to the local government councils. And the local government councils are enjoined to make laws as to how those monies can be utilized. It's the same thing for the National Assembly. The National Assembly does the tracing, back-end tracking of the monies that comes from the National Assembly, from the, what do you call it now, from the Federation.
The Federation account
to, that trickles down to the local government. They have that power to make laws to make sure that's distant. But the majority of the powers, as it is now in the Constitution, inheres with the state. But here it is. The state houses of assembly have been pocketed.
Unfortunately.
If that word is usable, I would say the state houses of assembly are the most useless institution in the country, because what? They shouldn't even be there. It's a waste of time. They're not effective. No talk of councillors within this.
Can we talk about how they may have worsened the?
Because what? They surrender themselves to the state government. That is why it is because they are ineffective, and nobody. The more they do is to come and what? Sign or make a concurrence of what? What the what do you call it now? The executives of the state. That is this Lord Emperors you call governors. Either they come and read their budget. Somebody will come and read a budget for 3 minutes, he's walked away. Because what? He has told them, say, come, I'm calling you, come and sign this thing. That's all they do. And that is why you have Obaseki ruling for 8 years without what? A State House of Assembly. They haven't done for. So they're ineffective. But there have been some efforts from the national. I'm coming now to your question. There have been some efforts at the center to amend the constitution as it is, so that the local government council will be given direct constitutional autonomy, so that this issue of being ambivalent, let this one be happen, is no longer there. But whenever it goes to the state, even this issue of direct payment, whenever it goes to the state, they kill it there. But this is where I'm now talking about the issue of the civic culture and our own surveillance system. The moment such a bill is going around, because what? For you to have an amendment, you need to have the concurrence of 2/3 of the state houses of assembly. That is where you and I come in. That is where I will now be expecting the civil society and all those of us who are dying and killing ourselves for good governance should start with. So that when that law comes, you follow it state by state. Any state that fails to pass it or concur, you make life impossible for it. It is when you go scattered and say you want to attack the states and the entire federation at a go, is spread wide and thin. But if you start this and say, for every state we are watching you, dare you, no pass this, will make life impossible for you. When they do that, they'll be able to have this. Because until you have an effective governance system at that level, you won't have development. Yes, the idea of federation, that is esoteric. We cannot say in the difference to the idea of federation. We now say because the state is actually the what? The overarching authority over a state, let us leave them in their own ways and allow them to develop. No. Because what? For every weak link, For every weak link, it affects everything. Just like the body. Look at what happened. Where did Boko Haram start? And why did it start? Look at what he has metamorphosed into today, and look at today the resources you are putting into security. Resources that should have gone to what?
Developing other sectors.
Infrastructure. Listen to the debates now going around the world concerning Nigeria and South Africa. All those South Africans, when they talk, I sympathize with them. But the question, the talk down has always been Nigeria has no infrastructure. Nigeria has no infrastructure. Because what? South Africa has infrastructures. Although my own retort is you have a physical infrastructure, but you don't have mental infrastructure.
Well,
let's come back to the thing. Indeed. So there is that urgent need for all of us to put out ourselves to ensure that the governance system in all its tiers is effective.
All right.
Yes, the federation being what? The master of all has to show leadership by example. But no matter how effective the federation is, as long as the component parts are ineffective, no. Because what? The federation is only a bowl. The content is in the states.
Indeed. Now, talking about this,
yes.
You mentioned the ineffectiveness of the state houses of assembly. And in another conversation, you mentioned the ideologies that the two main political parties in the United States, the Republican Party and the Democratic parties, have. You would naturally see somebody who, follows the tenets of the Republican ideology to continue to promote them. Likewise, the Democratic ideologies. But then again, when we come to the states here in Nigeria, we see a political class that follows the governor hitherto, to the extent that whatever he says becomes law in the parties. Stay with me, let us say, in the parties. Now, when we have that situation, especially when these governors have these members of the State House of Assemblies in their pockets, they are leaders of their parties as well. It means that they might be the ones, buying forms for State Houses of Assembly members, for chairmanship members, bearing in mind that all of these go on at the party level, not even at the state government level, before we even get there. Is it now possible for us to see some of the things that you've been so clamoring for example, responsibility of the State Houses of Assembly, or how do we even begin to make life difficult for people who, from the party level, are already so loyal to the state governors that they will not even be seen, openly going or contravening anything that he says?
There is so much to do, and that's where the idea of tinkering with the structures of the federation comes in. Let's have a think about it. I will say this in a very quiet voice because I want it to sink in, go and think. How many years did Awolowo take to turn around the Western region, the Sardauna, for the North, the entire North that you're talking about today, 19 states? How many years did Okpara and Zik take to turn around the fortunes and all the development you see in the East? How many years? How old were they? But here were very strong institutions. For example, the Council of Chiefs, or whatever it is, the Council of Chiefs. Just imagine you have a local government system where you have the Oba of Benin. You understand? Or you have the Oni of Ife, or you have the Sultan of Sokoto, and all of this one holding their arrest there and superintending over it as a council, not as one individual. And have that in mind and see whether a governor, no matter what expensive drink he drinks or expensive vegetable he takes, he cannot. Because what? He can't push them around. He cannot. And that was why those people had to work. Because what? There was a system that made them what?
So it's a systemic problem.
It's a systemic problem. Here, you give the entire powers to an individual. Just imagine a poor me now. You go and put me over the resources of a state where if I wake up, my protocol officer would tell me that I have something worth of $10 million to play with off record in a month. Meanwhile, every other activity that I do is paid for by the state. That money is trickling down there by the minute. The longer I am, the more I'm seeing it floating like a mountain. And you expect me to be sane? It will not. I would also say so. Let me just put it across. I said, do you know, with due respect, I'm not in any way trying to be very cynical or disrespectful to the women folks. But do you know why governance is getting attractive to women more than men in Europe and America now? You see all the, that there's no money there.
There's no money there.
The men are going to the corporate, corporate
and
world
look for money
where the big monies are. You understand? So the women.
So
here,
yeah.
Nobody wants to be a Dangote because it's a long route. I don't let Otedela be there. It's a long route. I want to be a governor. Let me be a governor.
Let's put this cynical words of wisdom as, of course, we round up the conversation. Let us say, and thank you so much, Sam Kargbo,
thank you very much.
Coming on, and of course for sharing these nuggets with us.
Thank you.
Let us say and says, well, the reason why women have been attracted to political positions as opposed to their male counterparts in Europe and the likes is because governance is not attractive financially. Perhaps if that is made here in Nigeria, we'll see the emergence of more women taking up political positions. After all, they are mothers and they are nurturers, and they will know how to assess the problems of the country, as it were. Perhaps someday we'll see that happen. However, we'll call it a wrap on the discussion segment as well. We now go on a quick